I'd like to thank everyone for being here. And sadly, I'd like to thank the Ranzo family and friends for joining us the third time here in the Capitol with me in the last few years, and the third time with our District Attorney, Birgit Flatiger. It's really sad that this family would have to go through about 20 different parole hearings over time, given that this case involved 4 defendants. Phil and Kathy Ranzo's life shouldn't have been just another case file that moves through the system. Their lives nearly 40 years earlier were brutally ended in their murder. This still has meaning for our community and for their families. The murderous perpetrators of this horrible crime should still feel the weight of justice. Close to 3 years ago, Governor Brown denied parole for 2 of the 4 perpetrators involved in this crime, Jeffrey Allen Maria and Marty Spears. In denying their parole, the governor did the right thing, and we are here to ask him to do the same thing again by denying parole for Ronald Anderson. The crime that Ronald Anderson helped to commit, plainly speaking, was nothing more than a thrill killing. He was along for the ride. The Ranzos were already bound helpless when they were brutally beaten, violated, and stabbed to death, and then their house was ransacked. And what was particularly despicable about this crime was the length of time over which it occurred, and the suffering that was endured by both of them, and the intentional forcing of one member of the family to watch the other endure the torture and the suffering, and the back and forth of that occurred over time. And these 4 individuals got a thrill out of watching all of this suffering. This was not just a home invasion robbery, it was the slaughter of innocent people who were willing to come to the aid of these 4 who acted as though they were in need. The Ranzos were being good Samaritans and trying to be helpful. Governor Brown releasing Ronald Anderson would set a terrible precedent for the release of the other 3 involved in the murders. Let's not let them slowly chip away at our justice system. I would also like to point out that the parole hearing was conducted in the most northern part of the state 2 days after Christmas, at a time when it was clear that it would be difficult for the family to be there to testify on behalf of their loved ones. I would also point out that the parole plan for Mr. Anderson is flimsy, is not a plan that looks as though it will be geared toward success for he or his father whom he plans to live with. It appears to me that much more thought and planning should go into any proposed parole plan to ensure that the individual will have a chance for being successful once they're out among the rest of us. With me today, I have Birgit Flatiger, our Stanislaus County District Attorney, John Gould and Elizabeth DeJong from the San Joaquin County District Attorney's Office, Frolan Mariscal, District Attorney Investigations Bureau, and Sandy and Mark Ranzo representing their family members. Also, we have Maureen Ranzo, Michael Naranjo, Tim Zolan, Shauna Lewis, and friends of the family. I will now turn it over to District Attorney Birgit Flatiger. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Senator Galgiani for being so willing consistently to stand up in support of the Ranzo family. It's not enough really to imagine what the family had to go through after the killings, but in the years since then they have had to repeatedly go through it again and again by attending repeated parole hearings. We are here to ask the governor to reverse the recent grant of parole for the 3rd individual involved in these killings. The sad news is that the 2 others for whom the governor previously reversed parole, they will be up for parole hearings again. This has got to stop. If there is any way we can really take steps to make the community safer and the state safer, one way would be to give the governor, to make his reversals have power and meaning, and say if he reverses a grant of parole, that individual should not come up for parole again for at least 5 years. Otherwise, we're right back in the same system, and we're just brutalizing the victims' families. I'd like to turn it over to Deputy DA DeYoung, and she's been attending many of these hearings, and she'll speak a little bit, and then we'll turn it over to the family. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator, for your time and your commitment to justice in this case. I have participated in the hearings for the 4 crime partners since 2011. I've attended approximately a dozen of them. Each time the family has to open their wounds and explain the case while these crime partners are pleading for parole. 2 times, crime partners have been granted parole by the board, and thankful to the governor we are that he reversed those grants. We implore you, Governor Brown, to make that same decision in this case. Ronald Anderson should not see the light of day, nor should he be released. Even in his 2016 interview by the prison itself, he told them, "I still have a lot of work to do." That was out of his own mouth. Governor, listen to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Galgiani, and thank you, Birgit Flatiger, the District Attorney for Stanislaus County, and our friend and Deputy District Attorney Beth DeYoung, who attends the parole hearings with us. My name is Sandy Ranzo. Philip Ranzo was my brother. And at the time that Phil and Kathy were brutally slaughtered, Mark, was my nephew, was only 10 years old at the time. My brother had his PhD in pharmacology. My sister-in-law, Kathy Ranzo, had a beauty shop. They were just an up-and-coming young couple, 29, just about to turn 30, with a 10-year-old son, working really hard. When these boys came to their house, it was premeditated, it was calculated. They came to their house, they knocked on the door and said they were out of gas and they wanted to use the phone. Well, my brother said, "We're in a new house, it's not working, but I'll get you gas out in the garage." And that's where they hog-tied him. They slashed him with a knife. They used an axe on him and stabbed him multiple times while they ran in and out of the house, ransacking it. Philip and Kathy's parents lost their son and daughter. The community of Modesto was shaken to its core with fear. How could a loving family, Philip, who was being a good Samaritan, and Kathy, who owned her shop, be sadistically murdered, and Kathy was raped? Because these 4 teenagers wanted to kill for a thrill, and they said that in trials, and they said that in hearings, and they said that all along. So after so many years, Ronald Anderson, who has done nothing to change in 30 years, wants to get out. He says that if he gets out, he's not ready to face what he needs to do. I want to thank the governor for reversing the parole decisions, the parole board's decision on Jeff Maria and Marty Don Spears. And Jeff Maria now is coming up for another hearing June 6th. And Jeff Maria was up for parole a year ago, January 2017. We came here and really asked the governor to reverse that, and he did. So now we're asking him to do that again for Ronald Anderson, and we will be back here again if they decide to release or try to release, the parole board releases Jeff Maria. We need to protect the lives in the community, the people that are afraid of them. And they tell you when something this horrible happens to a family, this tragic, this violent, this that causes nightmares for years, that people need to have closure. By these parole hearings and attending these, we don't have closure. We never have closure. There's not a day in our lives that we have closure. We continue to do the parole hearings because we want to keep these sadistic murderers behind bars so they cannot hurt another person and cause us much grief again. Thank you.
If at this time, if anyone has any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Yeah, happy to answer a question.
So to clarify, if the reversal happens from the governor, it would be 5 years until Mr. Anderson, or Or is that what you're hoping for?
That is what I would like to see made into law, is that we pass a law that says if the governor takes the extraordinary step of reversing a grant of parole, that individual should not come up for parole again for at least 5 years. And I'll be talking to the senator about that.
I have actually introduced legislation similar to that my first term in the assembly, but I agree with you that it doesn't make any sense to have this revolving door where we keep reviewing the same case over and over and the same facts over and over. And if he was not suitable for parole in January 2017, I don't know what could have changed that dramatically in June of 2018 to warrant his release on parole. We've looked for a lot of savings within the criminal justice system. But this is one example of waste that's out there when we keep repeating ourselves over and over without really looking at the substance of the case and asking ourselves, what is the need to repeat this exercise when we just went through it? So I will be happy to work with you on that going forward. Thank you.
I'm just hearing the pain of the family in 5 years. I mean, I don't know if that helps with closure. How do we arrive at 5 years?
Because I would like to have a law proposed that has a good chance of passing. And if we said if the governor reverses parole, you never come up for parole again, then I think a governor would never reverse a grant of parole. If we come up with some amount of time, 5 years, 10 years, something that at least would give the family the opportunity to take a few years off of this merry-go-round of parole hearings, that would be something positive that we could accomplish, and that needs to be considered.
I would add that I think we also should consider doing a parole hearing in the same manner that the original crime was heard. When this occurred so many years ago, all 4 defendants' trials occurred around the same time frame. The parole hearings, the consideration should occur at the same time so that the facts of the case could be heard together so that those who are hearing the case can understand the complexities and how each of them were involved with one another. That also would save grief for the family to have to continue to come up here for each of 4 individuals one at a time over and over again, but rather one hearing where all 4 are heard together and those who are making decisions have the full benefit of knowing the full extent of the crime and the torture to the victims.
Every parole hearing that we attend, we ask each other, do you want to go? And the answer is always yes, because if they are released and they commit a crime again, which their psych reports say that that's possible, then that is just something that our family has decided that we are not going to live with. And every time we go to a parole hearing, we get a new detail of the crime that the crime partners have decided to kind of share with the parole board. But that still doesn't alter their decision. I mean, they lie to the parole board, we've seen that. We are, disappointed in, how they conduct themselves. They say they're remorseful, but the focus is on, how good has he been in the last couple days, as opposed to what has he done in the last so many years and how remorseful is he. But it's, they're kind of conditioned to see what they think they need to say. So we are committed as a family to continue to go to every parole hearing, to ask the governor to reverse the parole board's decision if they're granted parole, because we do not want another family to suffer at the hands of these murderers.
I just have one last on his name. Is it Ronald Ray Anderson or Ronald Lee Anderson? Because we have 2 conflicting reports.
I believe it's Ronald Ray Anderson. You want a C2C number? Ronald Ray Anderson.
We have the court document here. Bob, if you could please bring that up.
Ronald Ray Anderson.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, I forgot to tell him I brought this up at a different session.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, that will conclude our conference for today. Thank you for being here.